The stars did not blink as Earth's delegation crossed into Concorde space. There was no grand announcement, no glowing banners, no planetary anthems played across subspace relays. Just a modest vessel, matte black and angular, traveling on impulse. Power through the void like a predator without need for flourish. The ship didn't shimmer. It didn't pulse with bioluminescence or resonate with harmonic shielding like the others. It simply was. The Galactic Concorde, the largest and most stable interstellar alliance in recorded time, had summoned the humans after years of surveillance and mild annoyance. Earth's expansion, once dismissed as slow and erratic, had grown. Unexpectedly strategic. Colonies appeared on planets others overlooked. Orbital structures emerged without fanfare. Trade routes stabilized around them. And unlike most species, humans didn't ask for permission. Now they were here. At the edge of the galactic core, approaching Unity Spire, the Concorde's capital station, an artificial construct the size of a small moon. It orbited a dead star. Its surface carved with glowing veins of power and halls wide enough to accommodate Leviathan species. From the outside, it was a marvel. Inside, it was a theater of hierarchy. As the human ship approached, docking, the Concorde's internal chatter swirled with commentary. Let's see if they can breathe our air without choking. Primitive musculature, all bone and pressure like animals. Their tech still uses combustion. It smells. They expected confusion. They expected awe. They got neither. The human delegation entered Unity Spire through Gate 12, reserved for emerging species. 5 figures clad in plain uniforms stitched with micro-reactive threads stepped out under the Concorde's 1,000-dyed surveillance arrays. No translators were needed. The humans had already pre-installed every major galactic language into their neural interfaces. Their stride was slow, but deliberate. Their eyes scanned not in wonder, but in assessment, measuring distance, exits, ventilation patterns, defensive placements, as if Unity Spire was not a palace, but a potential battlefield that unsettled many. Inside the Hall of Civilities, the official meeting chamber, the attending races made a show of dominance. One floated on graviton plumes, trailing scent clouds, engineered for intimidation. Another flared heat sacs and rhythmic pulses, aggression pheromones thick in the air. Yet the humans didn't respond. Their faces were unreadable. Their vitals were calm. A silence deeper than language radiated from them. The voice of the Concorde, a collective entity of thought harmonics and fractal crystal structures, addressed the newcomers. Species designation: Homo sapiens. Origin: Sol 3. You have encroached upon Concorde-line sectors, activated unauthorized mining operations, and constructed outposts on classified frontier systems. You will answer for these transgressions. The lead human spoke with a voice steady and unremarkable, yet resonant. We observed no active claim on the coordinates in question, established operations on empty ground. If the Concorde desires dialogue, Earth is open to it. If not, Earth will proceed regardless. A silence fell across the chamber. Then came the laughter, low and layered, like storms behind mountains. Dozens of delegates, from high-rankers to cultural observers, joined in the mockery. One delegate, representing a hive species of immense political sway, hissed through its translator, "What do you offer humans? Spears? Ballistic metal shards? Flames and sound." Another, slithering across multiple gravity plates, chimed in, "The Council has invited you to prove your civility, not to recite colonial manifestos." Still, the humans remained still. No objections. No arguments, then. Came the trial display, a ceremonial offering of cultural significance. A holographic node was placed at the center of the chamber. Each species had, over generations, displayed wonders, stellar symphonies, philosophical equations, interdimensional art. The humans uploaded a data file with one label: Archive. Human civilization, compressed summary, all eras. It began. 10,000 years of warfare. The pyramids, the fall of empires. World wars. Viral plagues. Industrial revolutions. artificial intelligence, mass extinctions, global uprisings, survival under pressure, under tyranny, under bombs and famines and floods, and then space. The final exodus. But it was not the violence that shocked the assembly. It was the persistence. Even as cities burned, humans rebuilt. Even as species collapsed, humans adapted. Every extinction flirtation was answered with innovation. Every blow was followed by a clenched fist, raised again. One observer scholar of galactic history whispered, "They refused to die." Then the projection ended with silence. A simple phrase scrolled across the final screen. "We endure." That is our nature. Many delegates were unsettled. Some were offended. Then, without warning, one of the lesser representatives, youth from a minor mercantile race, launched a low-voltage stun ripple across the chamber. It buzzed toward the humans in what was clearly a political stunt, meant as mockery. Nothing lethal. The ripple struck the smallest human in the chest. He didn't move, not an inch. The chamber waited for a reaction. None came, but something changed. The tallest human, positioned at the flank, stepped forward and locked eyes with the perpetrator. No anger, no speech. Just a look. It was not a look of hatred. It was worse. It was the look of a species that had outlived its predators. The attacker collapsed to the floor, gasping. The stun weapon reverse burned out by its own fear loop. The silence was absolute, and then for the first time in decades, the voice of the Concorde faltered. "This session is adjourned." The humans turned, walked out without a word, and left the chamber colder than they had found it. That night, across 1,000 systems, the footage went viral. Not the attack. Not the archive. Just the way they had looked back, as if they had already decided what would happen if the Concorde ever chose war. Asterisk, in the weeks following the Concorde summit, the galaxy did what it always did. It moved on arrogantly, comfortably, blindly. The humans, having left without protest or fanfare, were quickly folded into the collective memory as a curiosity. A species of warriors, perhaps, but archaic in method and crude in execution, amusing even. The more diplomatic factions called them dignified but naive. The more aggressive ones called them unripened prey. But across the diplomatic layers of the Concorde, subtle tremors were felt too small to alarm the powerful, but too frequent to ignore completely. It started with the analysts. Each species in the Concorde maintained think tanks, long-range strategists, cultural interpreters, predictive intelligence teams. They weren't interested in fireworks or drama. They watched patterns, trajectories, deviations, and humanity was deviating. Trade convoys rerouted, outposts reconfigured, mining colonies ceased exports and went silent, terraforming halts, civilian traffic on SolNet, the human deep space data grid slowed to a crawl. Not because of breakdowns, but by design. The humans were pulling back. They were consolidating. One Concorde strategist, a veteran from the Kyrene Defense Collective, voiced concern during a private transmission to the Council. "This is not retreat. This is fortification." She was ignored. Meanwhile, humanity's core systems, once broadcast, rich and data transparent, began sealing. Stations that once pumped out tourism ads and interstellar music channels went dark. A strange radio silence emanated from the Sol region. Not electronic interference. Attentional quiet. Then came the first real alarm. A Concorde reconnaissance. Probe dispatched to a neutral asteroid belt near a human mining claim purely for observation. Or so it was claimed, transmitted only one image before being atomized by an unknown force. That image, though heavily damaged, revealed something impossible. An orbital structure wrapped around an uninhabited moon. Smooth, dark, ridgeless-like obsidian water frozen in time. A ring, kilometers thick, glowing faintly from internal energy. Cycling systems. There were no known species with the capability to build such a thing in such secrecy. It wasn't a station, it was a gun, The probe's destruction was not denied. In fact, Earth's transmission came immediately after. It was brief. "You're not invited. Stay off our doorstep." That single line was passed around Concorde back channels with a mix of unease and amusement. Surely this was posturing. Surely they wouldn't dare challenge the united force of the galaxy. But then came another silence. Not from Earth, from the frontier systems. Several smaller species known for scavenging and petty imperialism had begun testing the edges of human-controlled sectors. After all, if the humans were withdrawing, they must be weak, soft, isolated. And so, in what they thought would be a symbolic act of dominance, a multi-species raiding fleet entered the Tyrax belt, a known human mining zone they expected to find. Automated stations, maybe a few drones, possibly colonists they could re-educate. What they found was nothing. No ships, no lights, just silence, and then they vanished. No distress signals, no final messages, just an empty part of the map. Where once over 30 ships had drifted, the Concorde launched a full investigation. An emergency summit was held, and representatives of nearly 100 worlds demanded answers. Humanity didn't send a diplomat, they sent a data packet. Inside it was the full sensor telemetry of the attack the Concorde raiding fleet. It's descending toward human territory then. Footage from the other side, from humanity's perspective. 30 warships, dozens of species, weapons armed, and then obliteration. An invisible web of high-velocity, kinetic rods, tungsten shards traveling at fractional light. Speed shattered every hull mid-orbit. Not a single human ship moved. There was no fleet. No soldiers, just platforms, silent, ancient, waiting. The final frame of the footage showed the last raider ship breaking apart in absolute silence. It's caught in slow motion from a high-orbit drone. Then another message. This was measured. This was restrained. Do not misunderstand. We are not hiding. We are preparing. That was the moment the Concorde realized something vital, something terrifying. The humans weren't posturing. They weren't reacting. Weren't scrambling to survive. They were following a plan. A long one. One alien commentator described it like this. Most species evolved to conquer their fear of death. But humans, they evolved by partnering with it. They look at extinction not as an end, but as a puzzle to solve. Every time you strike them, they study the impact, and they rebuild stronger. They don't resist, they transform. And in that transformation, the galaxy had missed something. While they laughed, humans had built weapons that didn't need pilots, ships that didn't need crews, systems that didn't blink, armies that never slept, and worst of all, they never declared war. They didn't need to. Asterisk, the warnings were there, quiet but visible. A human silence that was no longer uncertain. It had become strategic, unsettling quiet, like the stillness before tectonic plates shift. The Concorde, ever confident in its collective superiority, misread the stillness as submission. They called it strategic passivity, a term born in high towers by species who had never known hunger, who had never survived their own extinction, who thought of war as a simulation and peace as something earned by status, not strength, but at the edge of known space, the spark. Finally came, it began in the Varan Reach, a human-aligned frontier system housing just under 40,000 colonists, farmers, engineers, families. No fleet, no military presence, only atmosphere processors, hydro farms, satellite relays, and dust-covered habitations planted into red soil. To humans, it was a place of quiet beginnings. To others, it was a soft target, a minor faction loose. Confederacy of raider species from the Sharon Clade decided to test humanity's resolve. Not the main Concorde, just pirates with flags painted over rusted ships. They'd heard the whispers, the rumors of Earth's silence, and interpreted it not as caution, but as weakness. To them, the humans were crawling back into their systems with their tails between their legs. So they came. 17 ships, lightly shielded, fast. Their goal was not total conquest, just terror, disruption, loot, a message to remind humanity of its place. The colony received the first warning when their satellites dimmed, blinked once, and went dark. Then came the Cums blackout, and then the sky began to fall. Atmospheric entry. Burn trails like orange scars ripped across the morning clouds. The colonists scrambled, but there were no soldiers, no bases, just civilians and outposts. The raiders dropped hard, tearing through surface facilities with sonic disruptors. They didn't kill everyone. That wasn't the point. They wanted fear. They wanted submission. They wanted to send a message to Earth. You are not untouchable. They did send a message. One of the colonists, before his cum relay was burned, screamed a short phrase into the emergency line. They're here. No flags. They're not Concord just killing for fun. That's all. 7 words, and Earth received them. The raiders, arrogant and jubilant, stayed in the system for 2 full days. Long enough to loot data cores, disrupt terraforming systems, and shatter the psychological spine of the settlement. But on the 3rd day, they disappeared. There was no retaliation from the humans, no fleet emerging from slip space, no planetary bombardment, just silence, and then the stars blinked, or rather they vanished. Every sensor system across 3 nearby star systems picked up a momentary collapse of light, a visual anomaly, a shadow that moved faster than anything natural should. It was gone within seconds. What followed was worse. The entire Sharon raiding fleet, the same ships that had landed on the colony, marked its soil with fire and scent. Back footage of laughing soldiers was erased, not destroyed in battle, not chased down and eliminated, erased across 3 solar systems. Hidden satellites, human-made, long dormant, woke up simultaneously. They hadn't been built for defense. They weren't ships. They were observers, strategic data miners embedded into asteroids and moons, disguised as debris, some decades old. They had only one task: watch, track, confirm. And when confirmation came, they spoke to something else. No one knows exactly what happened next. Some say it was a swarm of autonomous kill drones deployed via quantum split payloads faster than light, pre-targeted. Others say humanity unleashed something darker. Tungsten rods the size of passenger trains dropped from orbit at terminal velocity. Weapons with no warning, no heat signature, no defense. What is known as this: every ship in the Sharon fleet broke apart within the same 3-minute window, in different systems, under different conditions, without a single energy discharge, just rupture. Catastrophic synchronized rupture. No survivors. The Concorde tried to rationalize. Coincidence? A natural failure. Maybe they had outdated drives. But then the footage leaked. Not by Earth, by a Concorde ally. A silent video, captured from a listening post near the edge of the Varan Reach. Grainy, shaky, but clear enough. A shape, black, angular, near invisible against the starfield. No running lights, no IFF tag. It didn't move like a ship, didn't move at all. It waited, and as the Sharon ships passed beneath it, it released nothing visible, only motion, flicker, and then the raiders simply began to fall apart. Hull first, then engines. Then the life sign stopped. The video ended with a single frame, a laser-etched warning, burned into the side of an abandoned moon near the colony. The message was in every Concorde language. This was restraint. Panic spread. The Concorde called an emergency closed session. Many voices clamored to label the humans a threat, a violation, a rogue state. But no one voted for action, not even the militant species. Why? Because they'd seen the footage. They understood what it really meant. The Sharon clade hadn't just lost. They hadn't been hunted. They'd been monitored. For weeks, maybe months. And when the moment came, humanity didn't retaliate in anger. They responded with a pre-scripted operation, measured, controlled, emotionless. The galaxy finally understood the terrifying truth. Humanity hadn't just prepared for war, they had rehearsed it. asterisk in the vacuum of space. Sound does not carry. But even in that silence, the galaxy began to listen. They listened not to words, but to absence. Communication, blackouts, missing ships, station feeds ending mid-broadcast. Patterns that didn't match piracy, didn't match rebellion, didn't even match military doctrine. These weren't acts of retaliation. They were acts of calculated erasure. After the destruction of the Sharon Clade raiding fleet, strange paralysis gripped the Concorde. War declarations were discussed behind closed doors. Task forces were theorized. Alliances were reevaluated, but no action came. Not one ship moved against Earth. No one wanted to be next, but not everyone was afraid. A coalition of Outer Rim Worklings, too far from the Concorde core, too full of pride, decided to make a stand. They believed the humans were bluffing. They claimed the Earthborn threat was a myth inflated by diplomatic propaganda, so they assembled a force. 5 fleets, 72 vessels, 20,000 warriors trained in siege warfare. They called Namij it a containment initiative. They claimed they were going to quarantine humanity until they could be properly absorbed into the Concorde. They never reached Earth. They never even reached Sol. They were met in the darkened the void between. Systems where no rescue could come and no sensor arrays were watching. No declarations, no warnings, just ... movement. A single ship, blacker than space itself, appeared in their path. At first, looked like a weapons platform, unmoving, cold. Then it opened, the structure fractured into segments, unfolding with mechanical elegance, thousands of plates peeling back in silent precision. From its core emerged hundreds of autonomous drones. Not fighters. Not ships. Tools. Each drone, no larger than a man, no faster than a torpedo. What they lacked in size they made up for in design, equipped with submolecular scalpels, electromagnetic, shearers and AI targeting arrays tuned to systems, not soldiers. They didn't aim to kill. They aimed to disable. Command decks were severed from power cores. FTL drives imploded from within. Weapons arrays shut down mid-charge and detonated in their housings. Entire carriers were hollowed out from the inside, left drifting perfectly. Intact. It's perfectly dead. One Concorde admiral would later describe the aftermath from intercepted footage. It was not war. It was disassembly. Like watching a predator dismantle a machine it had seen 1,000 times before. No human forces boarded the wrecks. No demands were made. The ships were simply taken apart, piece by piece, as if humanity had built them long ago and now had come to take them back. Only one message was found across the remains, hidden deep in the systems of the lead dreadnought. Not broadcast, not sent, just left behind like a footprint. You trained for conquest. We trained for collapse? Word spread like solar flares. The drones, now referred to as shades by several frightened species, were not isolated. They began appearing in border systems, sometimes alone, sometimes in swarms. They never attacked first. But the moment they were scanned, the moment anyone locked weapons, they responded with terrifying efficiency. The Concorde sent observers. Most never returned. One vessel, a stealth-class ship operated by a neutral science guild, managed to record 3 minutes of human fleet movement before it was detected. What it saw became the most analyzed piece of footage in galactic history. The humans had not built a fleet. They had built an ecosystem. Warships of every size flowed like schools of fish, operating in seamless formations without spoken commands. Stealth frigates skated along magnetic rails, slingshotting across gravity wells to disrupt enemy sensors. Drones swarmed in fractal patterns, some scouting, some killing, some watching the watchers. And beneath it all, below the surface noise, there was something else. The footage caught it by accident. A massive structure, orbiting a rogue planet in interstellar space. No atmosphere, no light. A sphere, kilometers wide, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. It wasn't a base. It was a factory. No species, not even the most industrially advanced, had ever built something so hidden, so perfectly self-sufficient. It was clear now. Humanity had not just prepared for defense, they had prepared for siege, for the possibility that every world, every system, every station would turn against them. And in that scenario, they had designed tools, fleets, entire civilizational branches that could exist without supply lines, without central command, without mercy. And they were no longer passive. The galaxy, once laughing at human ambition, now watched helplessly as system after system fell silent, not through war, but through disruption. Orbital platforms stopped responding. Communication hubs rebooted and never woke up. Trade routes detoured themselves away from human zones. Not by political order, but because ships stopped returning. And all the while Earth said nothing. No proclamations, no broadcasts, no peace offers, just silence, except once. A transmission, leaked through unknown channels delivered directly to the Concorde's diplomatic archive, not addressed to any species, no timestamp, no return frequency. It simply read, "You feared we would become monsters. You should have feared we'd become precise." By then, the damage was done. Entire sectors were now ghost systems, abandoned by the Concorde, sealed off with warnings etched into asteroids. Here be the humans. Asterisk. The galaxy held its breath in the weeks following the collapse of the Outer Rim. Fleets. There was no counterstrike, no meetings of war councils, no demands for retaliation. The Concorde, for all its grandeur, became something lesser in those days, less a government, more a group of frightened aristocrats, hiding behind procedural language. The humans had said nothing. That silence spoke louder than any declaration of war. Beyond the Concorde's core systems, where the diplomatic glow of civility dimmed, small civilizations began to observe from the dark. In quiet systems and cold moons, sensor platforms were repurposed. Old orbital telescopes reactivated, data analysts pulled from cultural study and reassigned to watch one thing: humanity. They did not watch openly. No one was foolish enough to launch probes now. Instead, they observed from the fringe gravitational echo sensors, neutrino detectors, long-range visual arrays capturing distant silhouettes against the stars. What they saw was not war. It was not conquest. It was something worse. Patterns. Order. The humans had not unleashed rage, had not burned planets or broadcast threats or demanded surrender. They were moving with such discipline, such terrifying restraint, that even species bred for conquest began to whisper of them with unease. It's not because of what humanity was doing, but because of what they weren't doing. There were no mass landings, no hostage videos, no destruction of trade infrastructure. Instead, orbital platforms vanished with surgical precision. Relay beacons went offline in exact time intervals at minutes apart, system to system. Supply routes were disrupted not with force, but by suggestion ghosts appearing in slipstream lanes. Navigational systems jamming for mere seconds, just long enough for ships to crash or vanish, and always, the aftermath was clean, sterile. One science guild, operating far from Concorde jurisdiction, compiled over 1,000 incidents and came to a chilling conclusion. Humanity. It's not waging war against species, they were waging war against systems, against the idea of vulnerability, and somewhere, in the dark corners of neutral space, observers began to speak of it, not in military terms, but in evolutionary ones. Humanity was behaving like a force of adaptation. They weren't fighting for territory. They were removing variables, like anything unpredictable, anything that could become a threat. It became clear then that the Concorde had made a mistake. Assumption had always been that the humans would respond emotionally, like most young species do. Outrage, fury, acts of vengeance. But instead, they had done what no one expected. They had begun to optimize the battlefield. A historian from a synthetic mind collective summed it up best. They are not at war with the Concorde. They are war waiting for the Concorde to recognize it too late. Across dozens of systems, civilian traffic dwindled. Trade guilds refused to pass through human-adjacent space. Insurance brokers declared those sectors non-viable. Even pirates abandoned their lanes. The economy shifted. The border realigned not by policy, but by fear. And still, Earth said nothing. on a distant outpost moon buried under sheets of methane ice, a group of alien scholars held a silent vigil, watching the remnants of their long-range footage. They played the same scene again and again, a small convoy of Concorde ships passing through what was once a neutral sector. The ships moved in perfect formation, their escorts scanning, broadcasting friendly signals, and then dash nothing, not an explosion. Not a flash of weapons, just a shadow, barely visible, crossing between the convoy and the observer's sensor window. After that, the signal ended. The ships never made it through. The scholars didn't speak as they watched the footage. There was nothing to say. One of them simply muttered the phrase that was now circulating through galactic rumor, like a plague. They don't fight like us. In the Concorde Senate, a diplomatic session was held behind sealed halls. The delegates, those who still believed, in structure, begged for an answer. Some demanded peace talks. Others demanded full-scale war. But the ones who knew the intelligence branches, the system analysts, the technocratic castes remained silent. They had run simulations, thousands of them. In none did humanity lose. In none did they surrender. In none did they even pause. There was no margin for negotiation anymore. No leverage. The Concorde had waited too long. They had dismissed, ridiculed, ignored. And now they were not dealing with an upstart civilization. They were dealing with a force that studied them while pretending to be less. A force that was now moving with the momentum of inevitability. In the Outer Rim, on a planet long used for experimental weapon testing, a forgotten communication relay sparked to life. It was one of the oldest in Concorde records, nearly decommissioned. But now it transmitted something unexpected. A voice. Human. Compressed but clear. "We asked for inclusion," the voice said, "and were met with disdain. We asked for respect, and were met with ridicule. Now we ask for nothing. We only continue forward." Then silence. And in that silence, the galaxy finally began to understand. Humanity's fury was not loud. It was not wild. It was not fueled by hatred. It was measured. It was precise, and it was still unfolding. Asterisk, it began without sound. There were no new attacks, no visible fleets, no storms of fire and metal roaring through the stars, just absence, the kind of absence that makes diplomats sweat and strategists reach for outdated maps, the kind of absence that felt intentional. The Concorde awoke one cycle to find entire communication networks simply gone. Not destroyed, not jammed, just missing. Their infrastructure was still there, satellites in orbit, relay towers intact, servers humming quietly in protected chambers, but nothing worked. Diplomatic transmissions never reached their destinations. Military command signals returned with corrupted headers. Civilian systems began experiencing strange failures, doors refusing to open, transportation grids routing endlessly in circles. Entire archives reverting to versions decades out of date. This was not sabotage. This was reprogramming across the Concorde's midcore. The name whispered on every encrypted channel was the same. Earth, and Earth said nothing. Not a single message. Not a single demand. No faces. No flags. Just the creeping understanding that this was no longer retaliation. This was occupation of information, of infrastructure, of identity. One by one, Concorde member states began broadcasting pleas for negotiation. Offers of territory, technology, even sovereignty. Humanity never replied. Because humanity was no longer listening, they had outgrown conversation. They had shifted beyond the realm of diplomacy into something purer. Colder execution of design in the artificial skies of Unity Spire. The Concorde's grand capital. The digital banners that once shimmered with color and pride now looped endlessly on standby. The city still moved, but it no longer responded. An entire government building awoke one morning to find their AI no longer answered. It didn't deny access. It simply ignored it. The most advanced quantum cores in the galaxy had been outthought. Some, SUSPECTED, infiltration. Others suspected technological superiority. They were both wrong. The truth was simpler, more terrifying. Humanity had studied the Concorde's entire technological ecosystem languages, command hierarchies, logic trees, communication layers, and quietly built something that existed around it, like scaffolding around a decaying monument. Not viruses, not malware. Just better systems, placing the old without permission. A single whisper from a Concorde systems engineer, found in a panicked voice message later leaked, said it all. It's not that they hacked us. It's that our systems have chosen to. Listen to them now. In the outer systems, vessels rerouted themselves in real time. Not with navigational charts, but with something deeper instinct, almost. Entire supply chains reversed direction without orders. Drones and storage bays activated and drifted silently into new orbits, waiting for instructions that never came. In over 75 documented cases, Concorde ships returned to port and decommissioned. No alarms, no overrides. They just powered down. As if they knew. As if something inside them had accepted that they no longer belonged to their creators. The Concorde panicked. In an emergency summit, one of the last held with full planetary quorum representatives, screamed across channels, each demanding action, begging for unity, but no one could agree on what was even happening, let alone how to stop it. One delegate, older than most, from a species known for their time-slowed perception, spoke calmly. This is not conquest. This is correction. The humans are not trying to defeat us. They are trying to overwrite us. And still, Earth said nothing, because Earth didn't need to speak. The few surviving intelligence branches within the Concorde began piecing together fragments, disjointed logs, corrupted code, odd synchronicities, and system errors. What they discovered? It could be called discovery was. Deeply unnerving. Humanity hadn't developed better weapons. They had developed better decisions, millions of simulations, autonomous command logic. Protocols that weren't reactive, they were anticipatory. Earth's actions, they realized, were not just responses to threats. They were moves in a game the Concorde hadn't known it was playing. The collapse of communications. Planned a silent takeover of civilian infrastructure. Modeled. The psychological degradation of the enemy without firing a shot. Engineered this. Was war not as chaos, but as architecture. No missiles. No invasions. No bodies. Just systems, shifting their allegiance to a better designed future. It was in this atmosphere of dread that the Concorde finally broadcast a full, unified transmission. A surrender. It was not dramatic. There were no tears, no ceremonial words, just a document, signed digitally by every species still capable of reaching a functioning terminal, offering humanity everything, their data, their sovereignty, their systems. In return, they asked only. For survival, they asked only to be allowed to exist. The response came. 3 days later, it was not from Earth. It was not from any known channel. It arrived in the oldest file format still used by the Concorde, ancient code rarely accessed except in historical archives. It appeared in every system simultaneously, even in places disconnected from the main grid. There was no header, no author, just 6 words, printed in monochrome across every screen. You had your chance. It passed. After that, the screens went dark, and nothing else came. No weapons. No ships. No instructions. Just silence. And in that silence, a terrifying truth solidified. Humanity had moved on. They weren't retaliating. They weren't angry. They were done. The Concorde, in all its size and arrogance, failed to recognize the shift in time. And now, they were not fighting for victory. They were fighting to be remembered. But even that might already be too late. Centuries passed, not all at once, not with silence, but with a gradual unraveling. It's like the last echoes of a storm that no one saw begin, but everyone remembers. The Concorde no longer exists, not as it once did. Its towering bureaucracy, once the envy of 1,000 worlds, lies in scattered fragments, withered senates debating laws that no longer apply. Hollow embassies where envoys speak in circles out of habit, not function. The central systems now float in a kind of limbo, their stars still burning, their planets still spinning, but their purpose, their gravity, gone. No war ever came to them. No fleets descended, no cities burned, but their control that vanished. Quietly, the younger generations do not know what came before. Not truly. They are taught fragments and state-controlled modules, a time when many species ruled together. Shared knowledge, tamed black holes, built monuments across galaxies, but when the lesson reaches the part about Earth, the teachers grow quiet. Some omit the name entirely, afraid to speak it. Others whisper it like a prayer to something unknowable. Humanity, to some, it is a ghost, a myth, a cautionary tale of what happens when you push too far. To others, it is a force of nature. Like gravity or entropy, something that simply is, cannot be reasoned with. But a few know the truth. They are the watchers, the remnants, the ones who still study the patterns in deep space, who monitor old codes and listen to old channels. Waiting for even the faintest whisper from soul, they know Earth never died. It simply withdrew. Its systems are sealed, now impenetrable. Spheres of technology orbiting their worlds like silent sentinels. Drones drift lazily through interstellar space, not in patrol, but in observation. And beyond Pluto's edge, where most sensors go blind, vast machines harvest dark energy from nowhere. As if humanity had learned to bend the vacuum itself too. Its will no ships leave, no messages arrive, and yet Earth grows. Not in territory, not in conquest, but in depth. Entire artificial moons now pulse with quantum activity. Ice and shells glow faintly around minor stars. There are rumors unconfirmed, unprovable, that the humans have vanished entirely into digital consciousness. That their bodies are gone, but their minds remain, watching, learning, calculating, correcting. But even if that is true, the real power they hold is not in machines or fleets or artificial suns. It is in memory, because across the galaxy, across broken empires, reformed alliances, hidden enclaves clinging to survival, one lesson has been burned. Into the stars themselves do not provoke the humans. There are worlds that bear no name now, cleansed of their previous identity. Some were raiders, others opportunists, still others innocent but nearby when the reckoning came. Their surfaces are smooth, not cratered, not blasted, just clean, like a slate wiped of its story. On those planets, there are monuments, black stone. No inscription, but when touched, they pulse, and when listened to closely, they speak. Not aloud, not in language, in memory. The stories vary, but the ending never does. A world thought too strong to fall, a people too proud to submit, a message sent in arrogance, and then nothing, no fire, no invasion, just the quiet recognition that humanity had noticed them. That was always enough. And yet, in this darkness, something stranger remains. Not hatred, not vengeance. For when the galaxy speaks of humanity now, it does not speak of cruelty, does not speak of terror for terror's sake. It speaks of the fury that comes not from rage, but from clarity, of a species that did not react blindly, but moved with intention, with patience, with structure. A species that never demanded obedience, only respect him when it was denied. Did not shout or weep, they simply removed those who could not understand. There are still those who search for them, who try to breach the veil around soul, who send signals toward Earth, desperate for acknowledgement, for absolution, for the chance to say, we were wrong. But Earth does not reply. It doesn't need to. It has already taught the lesson. One final story, passed along by wandering traders and hermit philosophers, says that on the edge of a dead system far beyond known space, there is a single monument taller than mountains, older than memory, etched into its side. Burned by something no fire could replicate is a phrase. 6 words, in every language, unchanging, undeniable. We asked for fear. They gave us fury. And beneath those words, buried deep in the foundation, lies something else. Something pulsing, still active after all these years. A listening device, still waiting. Because while humanity has gone silent, they have not gone. Blind, they are still watching, still listening, and they are not done. They are only patient.